In a distant part of the galaxy, far away from Earth, there lived a beautiful alien princess named Lyra. She came from a planet called Zarn, a world full of vibrant colors, tall forests, and wide rivers that stretched across the land. Lyra had been born into royalty, with a crown on her head, and the future of her people resting on her shoulders. But, despite her title, Lyra's life was not as easy as it seemed. A long time ago, during a brutal war that shook the peaceful planet of Zaron, Lyra was injured in a terrible attack. The attack left her paralyzed from the waist down. While others recovered, Lyra found herself in a wheelchair, her once strong legs unable to carry her. Many thought of her as weak now, and they began to see her differently. The royal halls once, filled with joy and laughter, grew silent. The other aliens, who had once admired her for her grace and beauty, no longer showed her the same respect. Suitors who had once competed for her hand in marriage now turned away. Lyra was no longer seen as the strong, perfect princess. She was now the disabled princess, and too many made her unworthy. Her friends, family, and the people of Zarin tried to comfort her, but nothing seemed to change. The people of her world, as beautiful and advanced as they were, still held onto old traditions. Strength was everything. And with her disability, Lyra was considered weak, not the ideal ruler. No one wanted her as their mate. At night, Lyra would look out of her window at the stars, her heart heavy with sadness. She would think about how it would feel to be loved, truly loved, by someone who saw beyond her disability. Her dreams were filled with images of a life where she could be accepted, not for her position or her beauty, but for the person she was inside. In the royal palace, Lyra often found herself alone. The other royals went on with their lives, finding love and forming bonds. She sat in the corner, her heart aching with longing. She knew that the expectations placed on her were unfair, but they were also impossible to ignore. Being a disabled princess made her feel like an outsider in her own home. One evening, as Lyra attended a royal banquet, she overheard a conversation between two nobles. They spoke about her, their words sharp and full of judgment. "No one would want to marry her now," one of them said. "She's not the same princess she once was." The other noble agreed, nodding. "It's such a shame. She's beautiful, yes, but how? Can a disabled princess lead her people?" Their words stung, and for a moment Lyra thought she might break. But she held it together, hiding the pain behind a smile. The worst part, though, was that Lyra started to believe it. She began to wonder if maybe they were right. Maybe no one would ever choose her. Maybe she was destined to live her life alone. But even in the darkest of moments, something unexpected happened. One day, while Lyra was attending a meeting with representatives from other planets, a human soldier arrived at the palace. His name was Jack, and he had come as part of an intergalactic peacekeeping force sent to Zarin to help with the rebuilding after the war. Jack was from Earth, a world far away from Zaran, and he didn't know the customs of her people. He was just a soldier on a mission. But something about Lyra caught his attention. From the moment they met, Jack had heard the rumors about the disabled princess. But when he looked at her, he didn't see her wheelchair or her disability. He saw a strong and beautiful woman. He didn't know her story, but he could see that there was something special about her. Noticed the way she smiled politely, but kept a distance from everyone. Jack could see the sadness in her eyes, the loneliness she tried to hide behind her royal duties. At first, Lyra didn't know what to think of Jack. She had met many visitors before, but none of them ever treated her like an equal. They all saw her as either a symbol of royalty or a disabled princess who couldn't possibly handle the challenges of leadership. But Jack, with his simple smile and respectful demeanor, was different. As the days went by, Jack and Lyra began to talk more. He would visit her in the royal gardens, sitting with her as she shared stories about her planet and her people. Jack never judged her for her disability. Instead, he listened, asking questions about Zaran, showing interest in her world. Slowly, Lyra began to feel something she hadn't felt in a long time: hope. One afternoon, as the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the palace gardens, Jack turned to her and said, Lyra, you don't have to hide who you are. I see you, not your disability, not your title, but the person you truly are." His words were simple, yet they filled Lyra with a sense of comfort and understanding she had never experienced before. The first time she felt like someone saw her for who she really was, not for what others thought of her. She had never felt this way before, and it was both frightening and exhilarating. Could Jack really see past her disability? Could he really accept her as she was, flaws and all? For the first time, Lyra felt like there might be a chance for her to be loved, not out of obligation, but out of genuine affection. But there was still a long road ahead. Lyra knew that breaking down the walls built by tradition would not be easy, but for the first time in her life, she felt ready to fight for her happiness. Maybe, just maybe, Jack was the one who would change everything. For her, Jack had been on Zerone for a few weeks, but each day seemed longer than the last. The more time he spent with Lyra, the more he realized how different she was from what everyone else thought. She wasn't just the princess of a powerful alien race, and she wasn't just someone to pity because of her disability. Lyra was intelligent, kind, and despite the pain she carried, she still had a heart full of dreams. Jack wasn't sure what had drawn him to her at first. It wasn't just her beauty, although that was undeniable. There was something else, something deeper. When he looked into her eyes, he saw a loneliness that he recognized, a kind of isolation that only someone who had been left out could truly understand. He didn't care about her disability, didn't care that she was a princess from another planet. What mattered to him was who she was inside. Every time they met, Jack noticed more about her, how her laugh could light up the room, how her intelligence and wit could match any of the brightest minds he'd ever encountered. The others might see her as weak, but Jack could see beyond that. He saw strength, the kind that came from surviving, the kind that didn't need to show off or flaunt itself. One afternoon, they were sitting under a great tree in the royal gardens, the leaves rustling in the breeze. Lyra had been talking about her childhood on Zarin, and Jack listened intently, enjoying the sound of her voice. "I used to run through these gardens when I was young," she said softly. "I would race with my siblings, pretending that I could fly. I always felt so free." Jack watched her as she spoke, a hint of sadness in her eyes. He knew it was hard for her to remember those days when she could run, when she could be just, like everyone else. But there was a certain grace in how she spoke of it, not as something lost, but as something cherished. "I can't imagine what it was like," Jack said quietly, "but I can tell that you were happy back then. And I can see that you're still strong now. You don't need to prove anything to anyone, Lyra." Lyra looked at him, her gaze steady. She didn't reply at first, as if weighing his words. Then she gave him a small smile. "Thank you, Jack. You're the first person who's ever said." That Jack's heart swelled at her words, and something inside him shifted. He had always admired strength in people, but what he saw in Lyra wasn't just strength, it was a quiet, unspoken power that didn't need to shout or demand attention. She was a leader, even if her people couldn't see it yet. Over the following days, their bond grew stronger. They spent more time together, talking about everything about Zarin's history, about Earth's past, about their dreams and the things they wanted for the future. Jack felt like he had found something he didn't even know he was looking for. With Lyra, he didn't have to pretend to be anyone else. He didn't have to be the soldier, the diplomat, or the one who had to keep up appearances. He could just be himself. One evening, after another long conversation about their worlds and the struggles they faced, Jack felt a growing sense of urgency. He had come to care for Lyra more than he had expected, and he didn't want to wait any longer. It was time to ask her what had been on his mind for so long. They were sitting in the palace courtyard, the stars shining brightly above them. Jack turned to her, his heart racing. "Lyra, there's something I need to say," he began, his voice steady despite the nervousness he felt. "I've spent a lot of time with you, and I've come to realize something. You are unlike anyone I've ever met. I know we come from different worlds, and I know things are complicated, but I feel something real here. I don't care about your disability or your title or any of the things others might judge you for. I care about you. I care about who you are." Lyra's eyes widened, and for a moment she was silent. Jack held his breath, wondering if he had said the wrong thing. But then Lyra smiled softly, a smile that reached her eyes. "Not like the others, Jack," she said. "You see me? You don't see the princess or the disabled girl. You see me." Jack nodded, his chest tightening with emotion. "I do. And I want you to know that whatever happens, I'm here for you. I don't care about the expectations or what anyone else thinks. I just want to be with you." Lyra looked down at her hands as if gathering her thoughts. "It's not easy." "For me, Jack," she said, her voice quieter now. "My whole life, I've been taught to hide my weaknesses, to be strong, to be perfect. But you're asking me to trust you with all of me, the good and the bad, and I don't know if I can do that." Jack reached out and gently took her hand. "You don't have to be perfect, Lyra. You don't have to hide anything. I'm not asking you to change. I just want to be with you as you are." For the first time in a long while, Lyra felt a weight lift from her shoulders. Jack wasn't asking her to be anyone else. He wasn't asking her to fit into the mold that everyone else had tried to place her in. He was offering her something. Simple love and acceptance without conditions. "I don't know what the future holds, Jack," Lyra said softly, "but I know that with you, I can face it. Maybe that's enough." Jack smiled, his heart light with hope. It's more than enough. As they sat together under the stars, Jack felt a new sense of peace. Lyra had opened up to him, and he knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. She wasn't just the disabled alien princess. She was Lyra, a woman with a heart as strong as any warrior, and Jack knew that she was worth fighting for. The days passed by slowly, and Jack and Lyra found themselves spending more time together. The palace seemed smaller with each meeting, the quiet halls filled with their conversations and shared laughter. They talked about everything there: hopes, their dreams, their fears. Lyra shared stories of her childhood, the days when she could run through the gardens, the days before the attack that changed her life forever. Jack listened, always present, never judging. He didn't pity her for her disability. Instead, he admired her strength, her resilience. He saw her for who she truly was. But as much as their connection grew, Jack knew that the next step would be difficult. He could feel his feelings for Lyra deepening each day, and with it, the desire to take the next step. The question that had been on his mind since the day they met had become too loud to ignore. He had come to Zarin as a soldier on a mission. He had never expected to meet someone like Lyra, someone who made him rethink everything he thought he knew about relationships, strength, and love. But now, Jack knew that he didn't want to leave without asking the one question that had been haunting him. It was a question that could change everything for them, okay? A question that could shatter all the boundaries between their worlds. One evening, as the sun set over the horizon, casting a warm orange glow across the royal gardens, Jack sat next to Lyra beneath the same tree where they had spent so many afternoons talking. The air was cool, the evening quiet except for the sounds of the wind rustling through the trees. "Lyra," Jack said, his voice steady but filled with emotion. He turned to her, his gaze soft yet intense. "There's something I need to ask you." Lyra turned to face him, a small smile on her lips. Knew what was coming. They had spent so much time together, and the bond between them was undeniable. But still, her heart raced as she waited for his question. "Anything," she said softly, her eyes searching his face for any sign of uncertainty. Jack took a deep breath, his hands trembling slightly. He had never been nervous about anything before, but this was different. This was Lyra, the princess of Zarin, someone who had been rejected by her own people, someone who carried the weight of an entire world on her shoulders. He didn't want to make her feel pressured or uncomfortable. He wanted her to choose him because she wanted to, not because he had pushed her into it. "I know we come from different worlds," Jack began, his voice quiet but firm, "and I know the challenges that come with being together. But I can't ignore how I feel anymore. I care about you, Lyra. I care about you more than I ever thought possible. I don't care about your disability. I don't care about your title. I just want to be with you. Will you be my mate?" The words hung in the air between them. Lyra's heart skipped a beat, and for a moment she could only stare at him. Jack had just asked her the question that no one had ever asked her before, the question that had always seemed so far out of reach, the question that, for so long, she had thought no one would ever ask. Jack saw the look of shock in her eyes and immediately regretted speaking. He didn't want to pressure her. He'd been so sure of his feelings, but now, seeing her stunned expression, doubt crept in. "Sorry, I shouldn't have," he started, but Lyra quickly cut him off. "No," she said, her voice clear and firm. She reached out and placed a hand on his arm. "You didn't do anything wrong, Jack. You just asked me the one thing I've dreamed about for so long. I'm just surprised." Jack's heart pounded in his chest, unsure of what Lyra's words meant. Was she saying no? Was she unsure of him? Lyra took a deep breath, looking up at the stars that were beginning to shine in the sky above them. "I've spent my whole life hiding, Jack," she said, her voice soft but filled with emotion. "I've hidden behind my title, behind my disability, behind the walls I've built to protect myself from the world. No one has ever seen me for who I truly am. Now you come along and ask me to step out from behind those walls. It's terrifying." Jack's heart ached for her, but he also understood. Lyra had been through so much. She had been judged, rejected, and misunderstood. The weight of her past was heavy, and he knew it wouldn't be easy to erase that. "I don't want you to hide anymore, Lyra," Jack said softly, his hand gently brushing against hers. "You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be what everyone expects you to be. You just have to be yourself. I'll be here with you every step of the way." Lyra looked at him then, really looked at him, and for the first time, she saw the sincerity in his eyes. She saw the love there, the quiet, steady love that didn't ask for anything in return, that didn't judge her for her past. Jack wasn't perfect either. He was a soldier, a man of war, but he had never treated her as anything less than human. And in that moment, Lyra knew that she could trust him. "I've never been asked to choose before," Lyra said quietly, her fingers tracing the edge of Jack's hand. "No one ever looked at me and saw more than my disability. But you see me, Jack. You see me for who I really am." Jack smiled, relief washing over him. "Then will you be my mate?" he asked again, his voice full of hope. Lyra took a deep breath, her heart racing. "Yes," she whispered, the word a simple but powerful promise. "Yes, Jack, I will be your mate." Jack's heart soared, and in that moment all the fears, all the doubts disappeared. Together, they would face whatever challenges came their way. Together, they would break down the walls that had kept them apart, under the stars. Lyra and Jack shared a moment of pure, unspoken understanding. In each other, they had found something rare, a love that didn't need to be perfect, a love that was simply real. In the days that followed, the news of Lyra and Jack's relationship spread quickly throughout the palace and the surrounding kingdom. Whispers filled the halls, and people spoke in hushed tones about the human soldier and the disabled princess. Many were shocked, some outraged, and others unsure of what to make of the pair. After all, it wasn't just that Lyra was disabled. She was royalty, and Jack was from a completely different world. Their union challenged centuries of tradition, and the reaction wasn't kind. Lyra had expected resistance, but the reality of it hit her harder than she had imagined. Every day, there were new reports of the council's disapproval, and her family, while they didn't openly oppose her decision, were clearly uncomfortable with it. They didn't understand why she would choose Jack, someone from Earth, someone who wasn't Zarin, someone who didn't know their customs or traditions. "You must reconsider." Her mother, Queen Valera, had told her one evening as they sat in the royal gardens, "This relationship will harm your reputation, Lyra. You are a symbol of strength to our people. If they see you with a human soldier, it will undermine everything we've built." Lyra had listened to her mother, but deep down she felt something shift. She had spent her life trying to meet the expectations of others, her family, her people, and even herself. She had always been the perfect princess, graceful, strong, and dignified. But in that perfection, she had lost herself. The truth was, Jack made her feel seen. He didn't care about her title, her past, or even her disability. He cared about her, the person she was inside, and that was more than she had ever hoped for. I can't hide anymore, Mother, Lyra had said quietly, her voice steady but firm. I don't want to live my life according to others' rules. I want to live my truth, Valera had sighed, her expression softening with understanding but also with concern. It is not just about your truth, my daughter. It is about the future of Zeron. If you marry him, there will be consequences. You are our princess, and your choices affect the future of our people. Lyra had known that her mother was right. She was the future of Zeron, and every decision she made would ripple through the entire galaxy. The weight of it pressed on her chest, making it difficult to breathe. Her mind was full of doubts, and for a moment she wondered if she was making the right choice. Jack too felt the pressure of their relationship. He had never expected to become so important in the eyes of the galaxy, and now with the future of Zeron and its people hanging in the balance, he felt the responsibility. Even more, he knew that by being with Lyra, he was not just loving a woman. He was becoming part of her world, her legacy, and the future of an entire planet. He couldn't help but feel a bit overwhelmed by the gravity of it all. One evening, after a long day of meetings and discussions with Zeron's council, Jack sat beside Lyra in the quiet of her chambers. The weight of the day hung over them, both, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. Jack could see the uncertainty in her eyes, the deep concern that was gnawing at her. "What are you thinking?" Jack asked gently, his voice low and soft. Lyra hesitated for a moment before answering. "I'm not sure if I'm strong enough for this. There's so much at stake, Jack. I'm not just making a choice for myself. I'm making a choice for an entire world. What if I fail? What if this is the wrong decision?" Jack reached over and took her hand, his fingers warm against her cool skin. He squeezed gently, trying to offer her comfort. "You're not alone, Lyra. Whatever happens, I'm here. We're in this together." She turned to face him, her eyes filled with vulnerability. "But what if my people never accept you? What if they never accept us?" Jack thought for a moment before answering. "Maybe it won't be easy, and maybe some people will never accept us. But we can't live our lives based on what others think. We have to follow our hearts, Lyra. You've already done more for your people than most could ever dream. Now it's time to think about what makes you happy." "What makes us happy?" Lyra looked at him, her heart swelling with emotion. Jack's words were simple, but they rang true. She had spent so much of her life trying to meet the expectations of others, trying to be the perfect princess, the perfect daughter, the perfect leader. But what about her own happiness? What about the life she wanted to live? Wasn't that just as important? For the first time, Lyra felt a spark of hope. Maybe Jack was right. Maybe it was time to stop living for others and start living for herself. She had spent too long hiding behind her disability, behind the walls she had built around herself. She had been afraid to take risks, afraid of what others would think. But now, with Jack by her side, she felt a new sense of strength, one that didn't come from her title or her royal blood, but from something deeper, something that came from within. "I love you, Jack," she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. "I don't want to hide anymore. I want to choose us, choose this." Jack smiled, his heart soaring at her words. "And I'll be right here, every step of the way, no matter what." As they sat together in the quiet of the night, Lyra felt a sense of peace settle over her. She knew that the road ahead would be difficult and that there would be challenges, but for the first time in her life, she was ready to face them, not as the disabled princess or the perfect leader, but as Lyra, the woman who had found love and strength in the most unexpected place. Together with Jack by her side, Lyra was ready to rewrite the future, not just for herself, but for Zeron and its people. The journey ahead wouldn't be easy, but it was theirs to walk, and that gave her more strength than she had ever known. The days following Lyra's decision were filled with tension. Word of her choice to be with Jack spread quickly throughout the palace and across Zeron, and the reactions were not kind. The royal court was divided, and many of the kingdoms. Leaders openly expressed their disapproval. The council, which once supported Lyra, now questioned her ability to lead. They feared that her choice would weaken her standing as a leader and tear apart the unity of the people. "You cannot be," Sirius Princess, one of the high-ranking officials, Commander Thalos, told her one morning during an emergency council meeting. His voice was harsh, and his eyes narrowed with disbelief. A human? You want to marry a human? This is unheard of. Lyra sat at the head of the council table, her hands resting firmly on the wood. She had prepared herself for this moment, for the resistance that would come with the decision she had made, but hearing it out loud, hearing the fear in their voices, still stung. Her people, the very people she had vowed to protect and lead, now doubted her. It is not about the human or the alien, Lyra replied calmly, her voice steady. It is about love, respect, and the future. Jack has shown me more kindness and acceptance than anyone I have ever known. He sees me for who I am, not just for my title, my family, or my disability. The room fell silent. The council members exchanged uneasy glances, but none of them spoke. It was clear they didn't understand, and perhaps they never would. Traditions of Zeron were old, and they were powerful. The people had lived by them for generations, and the thought of breaking from those traditions was unfathomable to many. The future of Zeron is not something you can simply change based on your personal feelings, Commander Thalos continued, his voice growing louder. We have always ruled with strength, and we cannot afford to show weakness. This relationship will bring nothing but division. Lyra's heart clenched at his words, but she didn't let them break her. She had made her decision, and she was not going to back down now. I am not showing weakness, she said firmly, her eyes locking with Thalos. I am showing strength in choosing my own path, in choosing love over tradition. It is time for Zarin to move forward. It is time for change. The tension in the room grew thick, and Lyra could feel the weight of their stares. For the first time in her life, she realized that her decision might cost her everything: her people's trust, her place as a leader, and even her family's approval. But she also knew that if she did not take this step, she would forever be trapped in the role others had chosen for her. She would never be free. The council meeting dragged on, with each member voicing their concerns and doubts. But despite their opposition, Lyra stood firm. She refused to back down, refused to let fear control her future. By the time the meeting ended, it was clear that the rift between her and the council was wide. But in her heart, Lyra knew that the true battle was not with them, it was within herself. She had chosen Jack, and she had chosen a future that was her own. Later that evening, as Lyra sat in the quiet of her chambers, she couldn't shake the feeling of isolation that had settled over her. The palace, once a place of comfort and belonging, now felt like a cold, empty space. The walls, adorned with the symbols of Zaren's rich history, seemed to close in on her. For the first time, Lyra truly felt the weight of what she had chosen. As if sensing her distress, Jack appeared at the door, his expression soft and concerned. He had been quiet during the council meeting, allowing Lyra to speak for herself. But now, seeing the toll it had taken on her, he couldn't stay away. "Hey," he said gently, stepping into the room. "How are you holding up?" Lyra looked up at him, her eyes tired but determined. "It's hard," she admitted. "I knew it wouldn't be easy, but hearing them tell me that I'm wrong for choosing you, it hurts." Jack walked over to her, sitting beside her on the edge of the bed. He took her hand in his touch warm and steady. "I can't imagine what you're going through," he said softly. "I want you to know that I'm here, no matter." "What? You don't have to carry this alone." Lyra leaned into him, grateful for his presence. She had spent so much time alone, trying to protect herself, trying to live up to the expectations of others. But with Jack, she didn't have to be perfect. She could be herself. She could be vulnerable. "I'm scared, Jack," she confessed, her voice barely a whisper. "I'm scared of losing everything. My people, my title, ... you. I don't know if I can handle the weight of this." Jack gently lifted her chin, making her look into his eyes. "You're not going to lose me," he said firmly. "And as for the rest, you don't have to carry that weight alone. We'll figure it out together." Lyra felt a tear slip down her cheek, but it wasn't one of sadness. It was a tear of relief, of release. For the first time, she felt like she wasn't alone in her fight. Jack was right. They would face everything together, and maybe that was all they needed. The road ahead would be difficult. Lyra knew that. She knew there would be more opposition, more challenges, more pain. But in Jack, she had found someone who believed in her. Someone who didn't see her as a princess or a disabled woman, but as a person. And that, more than anything, was what gave her the strength to move forward. I don't know what the future holds, Lyra said quietly, but I know that I want you in it. I choose you, Jack, and I will fight for us, for what we have. Jack smiled, his heart full of pride and love. And I'll fight with you, no matter what. The days after Lyra's bold decision were filled with tension and uncertainty. The palace was still divided. The royal court was full of whispers, and many of Zaren's leaders continued to openly question her choice. But despite the pressure, Lyra felt something inside her begin to shift. For the first time in her life, she was no longer afraid to stand up for herself. She was no longer bound by the weight of tradition. She had chosen love, and that love had brought her the strength to push back against everything that tried to keep her from it. Lyra knew that the people of Zaren had to see her as more than just a princess. They had to see her as a person who had the right to choose her own future, to make her own decisions. But she also knew that change would not come easily. It never did. One evening, as Lyra sat with Jack in the royal gardens, she couldn't help but think about the road ahead. The stars above twinkled softly, casting a gentle light over the peaceful surroundings. But in her heart, there was still a storm. The path she had chosen was uncertain. Her people didn't understand, and some of them never would, but she had. Jack beside her, and for the first time, that was enough. I've been thinking about what you said, Lyra said, her voice soft but steady, about how we have to face everything together. It's not going to be easy. I know that. But I think you're right. I can't keep hiding behind my title or my disability. I have to fight for what I believe in, no matter how hard it gets. Jack smiled and reached for her hand. You're stronger than you think, Lyra. You've already proven that. Not alone in this. I'm here, and we'll face whatever comes together. No matter what happens, we'll figure it out. Lyra looked at him, her heart swelling with affection. She had always believed that love could be a simple thing. But what she had with Jack wasn't just love, it was a partnership. They were building something together, something real. And in that, she found a kind of strength she had never known before. The next day, Lyra called for a public address. She knew that her people needed to hear from her, that they needed to understand why she had made the choices she had. She was no longer going to hide in the shadows, letting others speak for her. This time, she would speak for herself. The royal palace was filled with representatives from across Zaren, and the courtyard was packed with people who had come to hear what their princess had to say. Lyra stood before them, her posture strong, her heart pounding in her chest. Jack stood by her side, his presence a quiet source of comfort. My people, Lyra began, her voice clear and firm. I know many of you have questions, and many of you are disappointed by my choice. I understand your concerns. I know that I have broken with tradition, and I know that I have caused fear and uncertainty. But I am here today to tell you that I am not sorry for the decision I have made. She paused, looking out at the crowd. The faces before her were a mix of anger, confusion, and curiosity, but Lyra stood her ground. She wasn't going to back down. I have spent my entire life trying to meet your expectations. I have tried to be the perfect princess, the perfect leader, and the perfect daughter. But in doing so, I lost sight of who I truly am. Forgot that I, too, have the right to choose my own path, to follow my heart, and to live my truth. Crowd remained silent, hanging on her every word. I have chosen Jack not because he is perfect, but because he sees me. He sees me for who I am, not just as a princess, not just as someone with a disability, but as a person. And that is something that no one else has ever done. I am not asking you to agree with me, but I am asking you to respect my choice. I am asking you to understand that love, true love, is about accepting someone for who they are, not for what they can give you or how they fit into your expectations." Lyra's words were powerful, and as she spoke, something in the crowd began to shift. Some people looked away, uncomfortable with the challenge she was presenting, but others seemed to soften, their expressions thoughtful. "I will not force you to accept Jack or our relationship," Lyra continued, her voice unwavering. "But I will ask you to accept that we have the right to choose who we love and how we live. Ask that you respect us and give us the space to build our future." Jack looked at her with pride. Lyra had done it. She had spoken her truth, and now the world would have to listen. As the crowd slowly began to disperse, Lyra could feel the weight of their gazes following her. It wasn't over yet. She knew that. But for the first time in her life, she felt like she had taken a real step toward freedom. She had stepped out of the shadow of tradition and had chosen to live on her own terms. Later that evening, as Lyra and Jack sat in the quiet of her chambers, she turned to him with a smile. "I did it. I told them how I feel." Jack grinned and pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her. "And you were amazing. You spoke with strength, with courage. I'm so proud of you, Lyra." She rested her head on his shoulder, feeling a deep sense of peace. "I'm scared, Jack. I'm scared of what the future holds. But I know that as long as I have you, I can face anything." Jack kissed the top of her head gently. "In this together, Lyra? Whatever happens, we'll face it together." And with those words, Lyra knew that no matter how difficult the road ahead might be, she would never have to walk it alone. The future was uncertain, but with Jack by her side, she was ready to face whatever challenges came their way. Together, they would change the galaxy.